Hello and welcome to another episode of the Edufuturists podcast. That almost sounded like it was about to be an introduction to an 80s TV show or some kind of Radio 2 or Radio 4. But anyway, welcome.
It matched your glasses, mate. It matched your glasses. It was like
wow,
Pat Sharp-esque.
Pat Sharp, yeah. What? Funhouse. Do you remember Funhouse?
Yeah. Whole lot of fun. Prizes to be won. It's a real wacky show where anything will go and all that jazz. I don't know what's going on here. We say we're going to be sensible and people are going to stay tuned after 3 minutes and then look what happens. But
anyway,
how do you, Ben?
This is the Funhouse. This is the Funhouse. What you're welcome to Edufuturists, the Funhouse. Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm really good. Things are exciting. Things are hotting up from an uprising perspective, and things have, well good. Loads and loads of great partners involved for our Edufuturist Uprising. Awards nominations and voting well underway. And it's good, mate. It's good. Are you looking forward to seeing people in Leeds?
I know, 11th of July. Just hoping that the roof of the venue hasn't fallen in. We've gone really edgy. The old Red Bus station. If you're turning up on the 11th of July and you're listening to this on the day before, it's not derelict. It's still a venue. Come inside. There's going to be lots of fun. It's going to be exciting. Yes,
it is. It's going to be fun. I just want to share something really quickly before we invite our guests on. I'm a subscriber to the Harvard Business Review, don't you know? Yes, I am very, very posh. I'm not, but just pretending I am. And the title of this episode, or this edition, the May-June edition. Look at that. Look what it says. Ask better questions. The key to better strategic decision making. How much better could that be for me to receive that in the post today, when all I do, the work that I do, is about helping people ask better questions? So,
it's a good article, man.
I haven't read it yet. It only came through this morning. But what I'm excited about is reading this and then realizing whether they should have asked me to write it. But just kidding. It's another Edufuturist episode. I am very much looking forward to this one. To our guests who are waiting patiently in the background, I met in Bucharest, and they are going to be lots of fun in this fun house. So should we bring them in, Aaron and Ben?
Hello, hi gents.
Hello. Aaron, you don't know what Funhouse is, do you, mate? You're too young.
I would have heard my dad say it maybe once or twice.
Wow!
Yeah. Was it that one?
When times were better, times were simpler.
Yeah. Ball pits.
And the Friday tea was a turkey sandwich cut into 4 with a salt and vinegar packet of crisps. That is
Finders crispy pancakes. Living the dream.
Finders crispy pancakes. Yes.
I honestly, I've never had one. Actually, I've never had one, but my wife tells me they're amazing.
Ben clearly is excited by him.
Well, the interesting thing there is that I imagine that 50% of our guests who are not in the UK would be like, "What is a Finders crispy pancake?" I reckon that is definitely worth a Google search. So have a look at Finders crispy pancakes. Anyway, we're not here to talk about the culinary delights of the late 80s, early 90s. We are here to talk to Ben and Aaron, who are involved with the Inventor Club, and but more importantly are passionate about the future education. So I'm very excited for this conversation. So might be worth, before we dive into some of the big high ticket value items that we're going to talk about today, just give us a little bit of an insight into you. And I think it's always age before beauty. It's
that's me. I think that's me. Yeah. Well, I've just had a haircut, so I've cut all the grey off. So I lost about 12 years. So so I'm Ben. I've spent the last 20 years in new product innovation in various different companies, mostly in product design, making all sorts of weird and wonderful things. However, the last 12 and a half of those years was at Dyson. So I was in new product innovation at Dyson, heading up the future of environmental care, all sorts of things you probably won't see for like 5 to 10 years. And then I somewhat got involved in education about 7 years ago when I accidentally started an international kids club teaching kids innovation and problem solving, which is how I met him. Don't know where he is on the widget.
Yeah, I'm just over here. So, yeah, we met actually probably the only people to use social media as it should be used through Facebook, and I saw him advertise his Inventor Club, and I was teaching DT, and I was like, right, that seems like a good bit of CPD. Messaged him to see what was going on, if I could come down, just have a look for a session. He was like, yeah, fine, come along. Yeah, could do with a hand. Loved what he was about, and then sort of took it from there, and that's basically where we went off from there. Because I am a teacher, still teach, co-founded Inventor Club as the company with me and Ben literally a year ago, so we're sort of still a young startup in what we're doing, but I've been teaching since I was 18. So I was in outdoor education for about 8 years, and then have been in the mainstream classrooms for the past 7, and still am.
Love it. And you've got a little friend with you today, haven't you?
I have, yeah. I've got my poor little dachshund, bless him. He's that. If you couldn't guess by the bark, he is actually tiny. But he's just in the next room going mental.
Well, we have them all. Steve usually has children at some point involved in the podcast. In fact, our Edufuturists Uprising 3 years ago, Steve, 4 years ago, whenever it was.
Four.
4
Yeah,
years ago.
Ella will be 4 in July. So I was due to be in there, and then there were during COVID. There were complications, and I joined the guys with Ella, my eldest girl, just to say hello to everybody. So Ben and Dan had to run it themselves. But we were still in the hospital.
We did the online awards, and Steve was just like chilling. He didn't do anything anyway at that point.
Nothing's new. What's new? What's new? What is new?
Yeah, Steve was at the side of Sarah's bedside with a newborn baby, so like the youngest Edufuturist. But yeah, so we've had all sorts on the podcast. So a dachshund, he's absolutely welcome. So obviously, both passionate from an education perspective, and one coming at it from having been in industry for a long time, still in industry. It's not like something that you're not in anymore, because I know that you were in Vietnam not too long back, a few days ago, I presume, and then
I'll be back again soon.
Again soon. So in that space, maybe the passion thing, why. The thing that I grabbed hold of when you were in Bucharest heavily was there's a huge passion, right, in terms of we've got to do something different. And that's why what we wanted to try and get across in a conversation today.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's 2 parts to the passion bit. One, I'm ridiculously passionate about this to the point where I would leave an incredibly secure job where I could probably be there my entire life. I was doing fantastically well. I had, benefits and everything. And I've kind of jacked it all in and fallen off the corporate ladder. But there's a few reasons for it. So I'm a dad of 3 girls. One of the many things I've noticed over the last 6 or 7 years doing some of this stuff, going into all sorts of different schools, consistently the girls always start their sentences with, "This is probably wrong, but," and then they'll go on and say the thing. And so I think there's a massive issue for me there with self-identity for women in STEM and what that means. And if we basically miss out on females in education and in innovation, we miss out on 50% of the ideas that could change the world. So I'm massively passionate about that. In addition, I'm like a terrible holiday partner. Really don't go on holiday with me, because I was in Thailand when the tsunami happened in 2004 and missed. Our hotel got washed away, and we were not in it because at the very last moment we went north. So I should be dead. We were officially missing persons. I was squashed on the M4. I broke my back in 2 places, falling off the shed. We were in America when Hurricane Katrina happened. Like I'm just like dodging. It's like Final Destination is like a small part of my weird life. And so I think there's this amazing quote by Confucius, and he says, "You live 2 lives, and the second life starts when you realize there's only one." And so some of those things have really opened my eyes, and also the work I did in America. So we went with one-way tickets to America, gave away everything we owned, and had the most mental year out there. And we worked with refugees, we worked with homeless kids, we worked with inner city daycare centre, We worked in an area where prostitution was rife. I've seen some stuff that I can't unsee, and recognizing my skills, my background, my capability, what I can actually do, teaching people to genuinely solve real world problems. I can't ignore that. And so I don't know, it drives me. It gets me up in the morning and gets me going and makes me want to do some stuff that is actually genuinely meaningful, not just making expensive plastic widgets. There's enough of them.
And yeah, and I am equally passionate from sort of the education side, so much so that we're doing really well as a company, and I still won't leave school because we need as many teachers as we can get in the classroom and keeping them there. And the old adage of sort of people flying through the leadership scale and so on, I've kind of hit my level where I am a digital leader and I get to plan all of our strategies and stuff, but I don't want to go any higher. But I love what we do and the change and what we can affect from the company side and from outside. So it's not just my school and just my local academies and within the area. Actually, now we are able to travel up and down the country. We're able to get into international schools. We're able to really sort of spread that message across LinkedIn, across all the platforms and stuff we're on. And yeah, we're looking at sort of exciting products and stuff of what we can do, and that's all kind of just from our first year. And we love what we do. We just work like mad. I'm pretty sure both of our wives hate us really, because we spend more time with each other than we do at home most of the time.
Yeah,
but you can't do that if you're not passionate.
No, I love that. Obviously, I spent time with my team yesterday, doing some stuff, and we talked about some passion drivers and everything else. I also had a conversation with a friend's son who is in his first year at university. I won't name the friend. He's quite high up in a tech company, and he just said, "Can you just have a conversation with him, because he just doesn't know what he wants to do, and he's doing a first year of a degree and he doesn't find the passion." And I spent an hour talking to him. We were just discussing things and everything else, and I was saying, you kind of know that you might want to follow this pathway. It's cool that you don't know what you want to do. But what are your passions? What are your passions? What drives you? So it doesn't have to be the thing that you do. You work in the industry or you work in a sector that you find the most interesting. So not everybody, because I like football. Doesn't mean I'm going to be a footballer, of course. But ultimately, we talked and probably spent 45 minutes just exploring that, because ultimately, passion drives you beyond everything else. I think, when the money dries up, when the money's not enough, or even if the money is, I think passion wins over. I spent an awful amount of time in education where people kept saying, I need more money. But ultimately, as money increases, ultimately, I don't think it's the biggest thing to retain you in any industry or any job or anything. And I think it's just beyond that. And I think I really like that passion bit. And is that what you're trying to drive and stir up? Love it. Absolutely love that.
Oh, indeed.
This is my motto, and I've got it on the back of my iPad for a reason: is follow the dopamine. Do what you enjoy, and that's always going to lead you through. I'm really lucky I did that from 18. That's why I went into outdoor education, because at the time I didn't really want to do uni. Like I thought I did, kind of got pushed down that path, and that's where everything was pointing to and leading me to, and everyone wanted. But actually, it was real last minute where I had all my offers and everything back as well, and I just went, actually, it's not really what I want, and I'm so glad I did, because it's led me to where I am now. But you have to, like I said, you have to follow what you enjoy, your passion and everything else. And Ben, you'll know this as well, with sort of like ADHD and everything else. They've kind of got this license to go, do you know what? Like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to enjoy it because my brain is pulling me this way. I know I kind of got to do that. I'll figure that out and it will get done at some point. But I really want to play with this. I want to do that. And like I said, Ben's a nightmare as well. He's the same. I cannot get him to do what he needs to do because he's on the 3D printer or he's CADing something up and making something because the inspiration has struck. And there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. Like, that's the thing. It sounds like it's a slack off. It sounds like it's, I'm going to do what I want, a selfish thing. But actually, you're going to get where you're going to be if you follow and do what you enjoy and what you need.
My dad did the same job for 40 years and he hated it. He missed out on his dream. His dream was to be in the RAF. And I think there was 2 points. I think he missed out like some sort of test, and he missed out like by 1 point, which is obviously going to piss you off. And then in addition, his eyesight And so the following day, he got a job at Kodak, and he worked there for 40 years. And to be brutally honest, it broke him as a human being. He was doing, towards the end, he was doing like 4 days and then 4 nights and 4 days and 4 nights. Like his brain never knew where he was, and he hated it. And I think there was a real thing back then, which was just about duty, and I've got to pay the bills, got to do the stuff, just got to keep going, and like the fear of what might be if you left. And then consequently, I got my first good job off the back of university. At this security firm. I was the only design engineer there, and then after one year, jacked in my job. Parents were livid. They're like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" I'm like, "Look, I've just got to go and follow my dreams. I've got to go and follow my passions." And that was one of the many times that we went off with one-way tickets. But what I found is that if you are that passionate and if you are that driven, and you've got a set of skills that are actually genuinely useful, like my skills have paid our way around the whole world. We've done all sorts of really weird stuff in other countries, but I know that I can get work elsewhere. And also as a direct result of doing all of that stuff, I know that kind of stuff doesn't really mean anything. Relationships, family, happiness are like significantly more important than having the next cool thing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree, and nobody's in that space is saying don't have cool things and don't have a plan and don't. If you find a job you love, and not to be that cheesy guy to say find a job you love and you never have to work a day in your life stuff, but
I'm usually that guy.
But that is a really interesting space because all of us on the call right now have pivoted significantly, either once or multiple times, from what we thought was going to be a career path or what we thought was going to happen, and then something comes in, whether that is pain or whether that is purpose or whether that is an opportunity, whether it's chaos, whatever it looks like those things kind of come into our world, and then we go, oh, I wonder what the option is now, wonder what we could do differently. And so what I really like in that space is that it's not either or. If you become the person that finds a job and sticks at it and does really, really well, it's when that bit that you mentioned about your dad there, right? Which is, he never knew whether he was coming or going. He hated it. Like what there's people I've met. I met a guy just the other day, actually. Well, I met up with him just the other day, who used to be a head teacher, and he'd been a head teacher at a primary school, that same primary school. He'd been the head teacher for 20 years, and he'd been there as a teacher for 35 years. Same school. Loved it. Every day, every single day. Right? Woke up every single day. He knew he was serving a community. He knew that was why he did what he did. And those kind of people are few and far between, right? And it does depend, doesn't it? Interestingly, when you were talking about that ADHD thing, and oh, look, there's a squirrel. Like that whole principle of what the next thing is, it's really interesting in a space from an education space that we tend to think that we're still creating an education system, and this is my long-winded way of getting to it. We're still creating an education system that is presuming that people are going to do a job for life, and that they are going to go and they're going to be compliant. They're going to be part of a citizen of society and do what needs to be done. Yet we can't solve the problems that we're facing using the same tools and skill set and using the same time frame and mindsets that we did to create the problems in the first place, right? So, and that's kind of inventing, right? Inventing and innovation in that space and thinking out, well, this has been done like this before. I am literally just about to press send once we finish here on my newsletter that goes out every Friday. And the title of my piece is "We've always done it like that," and that being a challenge. So inventing. What does it? Where do you see it? Why do you think it's important from an education perspective?
What I know about inventing and making and building and creating and all that kind of stuff is that it's actually genuinely useful for every job pretty much on the planet. So at some point, doesn't matter if you're making plastic widgets or if you're trying to cook dinner or if you're trying to plan your next meeting, you're going to come across some problems. You need to come up with some ideas to solve the problems, ideas plural. You're going to need to look at those ideas and think, well, what can I do and what can't I do? What have I got money for? What don't I have? What do I need? You're going to have to ask some really, really good questions to fully understand the problem. You're then going to need to be able to down select what it is that what are we actually going to do? What's the plan? How are we going to enact the plan? You're then going to have to gather some people and talk to them. You have to communicate to them. You're going to have to share your ideas with them and communicate that stuff out. You're then going to have to get on and deliver something. And that is not a plastic widget process. That is a life process. So absolutely the core and essence of all of that is useful for pretty much every job on the entire planet. And that's why I think it's so beneficial. And the biggest thing for me, which has come up really recently, very, very strongly, is just this idea of these problems we're going to encounter. We kind of don't know what they are. Like, we can have a bit of a guess, and they're kind of, some of them are only ever growing, you know, climate crisis, food crisis, energy crisis, all that kind of stuff. But most of the problems are open-ended. You don't know what to do, but most of your schooling and education has spoon-fed you all the stuff. It's taught you to blindly follow the instructions obediently. Don't ask some questions, not too many questions. No, that's enough from you now. Thank you very much. You know, and what we need is for what I believe we need is free thinking mavericks who are ready to change the world. That's what I want to do. That's my mission. That's what I want to create. And it came up recently. Again, I won't say the name of the university, but I was at a university recently chatting to them, and I was talking about who are your students, who are they, what are they into, what are they about. And what was really fascinating, and has set off a chain of events, I had a really fascinating chat with a university lecturer this morning as a result of all of this, is that they said that they have to spend the first 2 years of that degree undoing their entire education. And yet the very thing that opened the door in the first place was that education. They had to get the best of the best of the best, learn all the stuff, spit it on the page in a particular fashion to be able to open that door, to only get through that door to be told, that stuff, can we get rid of that stuff? Can you now learn how to, you know, solve open-ended problems? Because they don't know how to do it. And so that's the value for me. That's where we want to get to. We want to move anybody age 7 to 70 plus from I don't know where to start to I think I've got a good idea of how to start, and I've got a few ideas already, and off they go.
And I'll jump in there because I'm like his education translator. He's industry, I'm education, and I kind of like reword stuff that he says, and like I said, hit our message, because he goes off and he's got these really funky terms. He likes to say, like, we're gonna come back round to that and stuff like that. But actually, our company strapline as well is where innovation meets education. And it was only a week ago that he went, "Oh, I just got it. I'm innovation and you're education." He didn't even pick up it. But yeah, it's so vital. Engineering is vital, and everyone forgets it in STEM or STEAM or whatever you choose to call it. It conjures up these images of science and experiments and things going bang and whiz and everything else. But the only reason you know that stuff exists is because it's physical. It's there in front of you, and everything around us has been engineered. And in a schooling point of view, where we have kids that are really obedient, really follow the rules, know what to do, sit down, and they can follow instructions, they can complete that task as long as you give it right. Actually, we forget to put the onus on the kids to solve it. And actually, that's why we believe everything we do as a company is about making problem solvers and actually posing a question, a problem, an issue, get them to solve it and come up with the instructions, because constantly they'll hit the very first barrier and instantly they look up, they're looking elsewhere for the answer instead of trying to work through it. And that's something that we find is that's so important, is just that mentality. A lot of what we do is mindset. We just use engineering and DT, whatever you want to call it, as the vehicle to do that, because it touches absolutely everything. So I mean, just imagine learning about forces in your science lesson, walking straight over to the workshop, and then you start making pulleys and you're lifting up the workbench because you've learned about the multiplier effect and so on, and how you can exert forces and so on. You absolutely bring that to life, because everything about engineering for that purpose is exactly for that purpose. We learn and we know these facts so we can make really cool stuff and do cool things and push humanity onwards. And you need that problem solving mindset in every job, not just engineering, not just design or product design, whatever you want to do. Everywhere and everything has problems, and it's about how you overcome and attack that problem, and that's what we teach.
Yeah.
I think
there's another really interesting aspect this morning that I was off the back of that one comment at that university. I'm in chatting to my mate John Nichols about doing a little project to do with working backwards from the problem. So if that's the problem with students getting to university, how do we work backwards from there to work out what should we be doing in education before that point? So I've kicked up a few conversations with various different university lecturers to see, is it that university or is it universities? I mean, I'm not going to be able to talk to them all, but certainly I want to talk to more people. And a really interesting thing came up this morning was that I think that obedience thing leads to almost a fear of repercussions, and therefore Ian was telling me this morning, he's like, a lot of the students are like, can we do this? Are we allowed to do that? It's like, when did university age students start asking permission to do anything? They used to be like rebels and, you know, experimenting and going against the grain and doing all that kind of stuff, and now we really have got to the point where the robots have reached full assimilation, and that's worrying for me.
We've talked about it. Yeah, we've talked about it on a regular basis. We develop compliance in education at every level. I love early years provision. I love my daughter starts reception. She's in nursery. She starts reception in September, and I'm saying to her, be curious, ask a million questions. If the teacher tells you that it's not your turn, just keep asking questions. And she infuriates me, does my daughter. She does, because we are developing an independent girl that just will not be quiet, won't be told what to do. Sometimes it's, you know, it's challenging, in it, you know, raising children like that, you know, and everything else. But at the same point, I look back and just think, she's never going to be told what to do. And at the same point, you know, you have to be respectful with it, and she knows respect and she's polite. But at the same point, I'm like, why is it that you can't ask 3 questions? And I went into the school. I was anybody who's listening, I've been the chair of governors previously. I obviously spent 17 years in education, and I just said, my wife told me not to, but I did it anyway. I just can't help myself. Just one of those people. And I went in for an exploratory day, and we could have conversations, and they were exploring things like, this is set up. And I was like, oh, brilliant, absolutely fantastic. We were outside doing water and sand and doing loads of different things. And we're saying, oh yeah, I'll ask a lot of questions, don't you? And I was like, I'll be honest with you. If you're going to tell me, I was like, I'll just stop it there. I don't know where it's going to go. I said, but if you're going to tell me, can she ask less questions? Or, and I was like, I'm just not going to hear. I'm not here for it. I was like, because ultimately that's what I want to develop. Because education is just around compliance, and it really infuriates me, Joe. The lack of curiosity that we develop, the lack of collaboration in beyond early years provision generally. Not all education, because there's still some fantastic educators out there. It's not educators. I think it's the shackles that we place on educators to be forcing them into, you have to be, we're forcing educators to be compliant in the main as well. And then we force education leaders to be compliant. It's all the way from the top. It's a systemic thing. And higher education has been no different, because ultimately it is the guide that drives everything else. The craziness is that, like I say, a university should be so much different. We had recently on the podcast the London Interdisciplinary School looking at actually multidisciplinary degrees. Why is it that they've never done anything like that in universities before? Because we've told them to be compliant, and this is what the programs that you can run. Nobody's kind of pushed the boundaries there, and it's A levels dictate what you do. Well, I suppose secondary school dictates what primary can do. College and A levels dictate what secondary school. Higher education dictates what everybody else goes before, and it's such a shame, because ultimately we've kind of lost sight of what learning is. And I think also I see jobs with innovation in the title, not in industry, but in education often, and it's one person, and you sit there and they come to me, and I spend some lovely amount of time with people with innovation in their titles, and they keep telling me that innovation's my responsibility as a person. I need to be more innovative. I was like, well, that's a concern. Which leader do I need to speak to and have a conversation of why have you give it to innovation as one person's responsibility? Let's shake it up a little bit. Let's think beyond that. And I think that's just the concern, isn't it? That
should be culture.
we have to. I think so. I think we need to breed something different and breathe life back into it.
You got to give them permission to do it. Like I said, that's what everyone's looking for is like I said, can I do it? Can I not? But then you go into a meeting and you put something forward and then it gets put down and you don't breed, like Ben said, that culture of allowing things to happen or to try things. And education, unfortunately, is somewhere where we're constantly fear of inspection, in fear of results, in fear of not giving the right knowledge or enough knowledge, and is it on the spec? And so there's always constantly, like I said, it's the answers are in the back. You're looking elsewhere outside for it. And like if you're someone whose job is innovation, is I suppose, like I said, you want to go out and give people confidence, give them the ability to go, why not? Have that conversation, talk those wild dreams, and then pick one, bring it to life. How are you going to go about it and do that as a team? But you almost want that person to be off timetable, not be a teacher, be someone who's constantly going around meeting, consulting, looking and open that environment up to make it a culture of success and God. So I think it's Stephen Bartlett who has a head of, is it innovation? No, head of failure.
This is all my talking about. This is literally in my newsletter right there.
Have you copied off my LinkedIn post on failure?
What's going on, mate? Yeah. Stealing your thunder. Yeah, all that stuff's dead important, isn't it? Yeah. I think there's also that fear thing comes back as well. When I mentioned earlier about the girls and they start the sentence with, this is probably wrong, but that is also fear. It's like, I tell you what, if I tell you that I'm wrong before you tell me I'm wrong, then I've built that wall first, and then I can kind of then I can say some stuff, and you can't hurt me because I've already told you I'm probably wrong. And like, when does that stuff start to creep in? And one of the main things that we're really passionate about is from the very, very earliest stages, that bit when play is acceptable and when they're just sort of generally experimenting and at that age, they're not worried about failing, they're just playing, but maintaining that bit about the failure and the acceptance of it and kind of removing it from us. So I didn't fail, it failed. And then what happened? Get the curiosity bit in. Where did it fail? Where did it go wrong? How did it go wrong? What could I do differently? And then to sort of separate that and allow it to sort of almost champion it and to champion, though, that again, it comes back to that culture thing again. It's like building that culture where it's acceptable and the ideas are welcome and the experimentation is welcome. I mean, I don't work in a school and I've maybe been slightly shot down recently for parachuting in, but one of the lovely things about what I do, I always get that one in. One of the lovely things that I get to do is I get to see primary, secondary, university, further education. I get to see these glimmers of all of it. And so that 60,000 foot view is really thoroughly interesting to see how does it all knit together and what's working, what's not working from that zoomed out view and how could it be more joined up. And if it's a long sort of 12 plus year long university entrance exam, which is essentially what it is. As soon as you get off the play bit, you're onto the treadmill of the exam train. Is that going in the right direction? How many exams will you do after you've done your final exams? And was the method in which you did those exams useful? What are you ever going to write another extended essay by hand that's was that useful? I don't know. It's just like, what should we keep? Because there's loads of great stuff. But then what could we innovate? What could we change? What could we compress? And I think one of the things I think is really valuable to talk about is the bloody timetable. Because that's the thing that is dictating everything. That all comes back from the exam thing. And that's what people tell me, that there's no time for that, the timetable. I'm like,
yeah, I agree. And interestingly, Steve, I didn't I've referenced your LinkedIn post in my newsletter. So I was going to leave that as a surprise for you reading it, but
everybody's ruining the surprise. Everybody's ruining the surprise. And also, we've just kind of announced when we've done the thing. We've just announced when we're recording this, Ben.
Oh no! You've done
it. It's all day.
Anyway. Interestingly, like, you're absolutely right. Timetables. Like, let's just unpick what's just been talked about. Right? We've talked about universities. And actually, is the aim of education to get people to university. I would argue right now, and that it isn't. But we've created a system, and actually, because it's still very much got its shackles on, we are still working in that way. Second thing that we've got an issue with is we've mentioned exams. We mentioned that exams are the things that people push towards. The third thing that you've mentioned is Ofsted and inspection. And then obviously you mentioned the shackle of timetable, and learning surely learning can only happen between the hours of 9 and 3, can't it, people? But we've got them shackles. And interesting though, like I feel like we should come to those and kind of like talk about, well, what could that look like differently? And we have, like as Steve mentioned earlier, that we were in a conversation around with the dean of the interdisciplinary school, London Interdisciplinary School, who, if you don't know already, I think would be somebody that you would love to have a conversation with about how the things need to work together, right? So like it's not, you don't have standalone subjects. It's not timetables focused on getting to just doing that. It's realizing, like Aaron said there, that science links to engineering, links to writing, links to creativity, links to art, links to music, links to all of that.
Yeah.
My challenge though, and we're definitely going to go into that space, right? And I'm not going to be that divergent for the sake of being divergent. My thought process is society has developed consistently, not just in the modern era, but consistently, to have some mavericks to be mavericks, because you said that we need more disruptive mavericks or innovative mavericks. But the vast majority of the population is designed to be compliant, and society is designed to be compliant. Now, my thought is this, and the traditionalists alongside us, and I am definitely not one of them. I feel like I'm about to say this, and I feel like I'm fighting against my own spirit and my. But the conservatives and the traditional, not necessarily conservative with a big C, small C, would suggest that if everybody was a maverick, we'd have a problem, and we would. And the other thing is, because if everybody decided, you know what, I'm not going to decide which side of the road I want to drive on today. I'm going to go left, right, middle. Yeah. Or what about other things where we've got to have some balance, some levels of balance, and I don't think what you're saying at all is we don't need structure, we don't need parameters, we don't need compliance. We do need to follow some kind of structure. It's just how do we then decide when to innovate and when to follow structure?
Yep. And is that the question?
If you're right. You're absolutely right. No one's saying, like I said, rip it up, throw it away. Like we just do what we want. But it's about having those conversations and people. And this is the difference, right? And like we could probably say you could do what you want. Like literally, I could probably send all staff email tomorrow. You're going to start with a class, no timetable. You can teach whatever you like, and you can like have the whole day. If you want different class, you can have different class. You go outside, do what you want. You could do that. Open it up. I reckon 80% of teachers will follow their timetable anyway. The difference between ideas and then action is then what separates the mavericks from the rest of them. Just because even you allow it, we could all do it. We can have that conversation and we can start changing things, but it's only the few that then go and take the action. I mean, we get really worried about people copying like some of our stuff, about patenting and all that kind of thing. But actually, it's very few people that will go and do it. They may have the idea, they may talk about it, but actually the doers, they're the very small minority that then lead the charge and let the others come along with them. So it's one of those where you're right. No one's saying start again, scrap it all, get rid of all the rules. It's going to be chaos. But it's about having that conversation to allow some of those doers to start doing and then bring that next portion with them. And before you know it, it all becomes normal. We did it with COVID. We saw that was a time where we got thrown into chaos and we started to reorder. Not because we had to, we wanted structure. And so I don't think it would ever be real chaos like we see in dystopian futures and Mad Max. But what it will do is there'll be little, here's one for you, COVID keepers. Do we remember? Everyone remembers those. So what we're going to keep. I'd like to see how many of those keepers are still around. So yeah, I think it's a part of having that conversation, allowing those mavericks to take center stage, and then experiment and try and move it forward. And I think you'll then be surprised once they've done the hard work, how many will then go along with it.
And earlier on, you mentioned in terms of the Inventor Club, did you say the age of 7? Is it the age of 7? Is there a particular reason why 7+? Is it? Am I starting too early? Is that why my daughter said to me
No,
if I went away and she said, because she said, "You told me I could do anything. I'm not going to bed." And I was like, "Brilliant. That's maybe why we don't start at the age of 4." And she also ran across the. Yeah, she's probably going too far, but maybe I'll wait till she's 7.
Well, look, I mean, I'm a dad. I'm a dad, and my kids have been young, and we've done all sorts of mental things, foolish things. I mean, the nature of what we're doing by making and building, we're putting knives, very sharp knives. We've got glue guns, we've got saws, we've got all the tooling and all the kind of bits and pieces. There are plenty of organisations out there that won't even put those things into a child's hand until they're 14. I just think. And we have done a bunch of stuff that's younger than that. I think you've got to draw the line at some point, and because our sessions are not like a school where everybody's 7 or everybody's 8. No, we've got 7, typically like 7 at times we've had 15. My half-term holiday camp, I had ages 8 to 18 in the same room. Society is multiple ages, and so that's good. But we've had younger, so. That 7-year-old bit, because we're dealing with knives, because we're dealing with some of that other stuff where you can take off a finger on an artery or something like that. You've got to draw a line somewhere. But there have definitely been situations where some other kids are way ready for it way sooner. And so I kind of set that limit, but have a conversation. It's a soft limit. And so someone comes to me and they're like, "Look, let me just come along." And actually, here's the thing. Those clubs where you go to where the door opens just enough to let the child in, and they shut the door and you can't see anything for the whole of term. And then you get to see like 15 minutes at the end. You're like, don't really know what's happened. Not in ours, right? In ours, all the parents are welcome at every single moment. And the beautiful thing about that is that, when you watch those kids' cartoons and they're good, they're good because there's the story aimed at the kids, but there's also like the higher level story. You're chuckling away because they've made some other jokes, which the kids won't get, go straight over their heads, right? We've got a narrative for the parents and we've got a narrative for the kids. Because as Aaron said earlier, actually everything we do is about mindset. And it doesn't matter what age you are, or your whole life is about learning, and everybody can learn to get better at mindset and about being positive about what they say about themselves, about creating and making and building all that great stuff. So we tend to start around 7. I definitely do stuff with my own kids. Have done mad stuff with me from get-go. Like we've been building all sorts of stuff. But yeah, generally 7. But there sort of is an upper limit. But recently, I ended up teaching a bunch of OAPs how to do CAD, and now they're fixing and improving all the Airfix kits out there, and now selling it. So in their retirement, they're making a bit of extra cash. And as a result of doing all this stuff recently, from next week, I'm going to be starting doing Inventor Club lessons, but for adults. Because what we found is when you bring the adults in, do you remember when you booked this for your kid? Yeah, put down the knife. Yeah, step away. It was for them. Kind of almost have to take it off them. But I'm like, actually, adults are just big kids. They love doing this stuff. So we're going to start doing some stuff with the adults, and then we get to talk about all sorts of other stuff. It's going to be great. It's like Inventor Club, but with beer. I think that's the general theme.
Beer, knives. Wow, that's
beer and knives.
Yeah. Finger will be lost, but sounds good. Sounds good. So the Inventor Club, the Inventor Club as a concept, obviously, you've walked through it.
Yeah.
What does that look like in principle? People might have seen the video online and some of the stuff in the promotion, but walk us through. You've kind of talked about the why, but walk us through what that might look like without giving too much of it away, so we're still leaving with inspiring awe.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll talk you through literally what we did on Tuesday. So literally our last session, and we've just started a new term, new topic, coming to summer, and so we have a theme, and that theme is light. Last term it was air. And so this is the real difference between what we do in school, and this is what hooked me when I first saw the club with Ben, is that's it. That's what we start with. So broad. We're talking just light and building that into our product. So we just had a conversation around that about where do we see light? Why do we use it? What's the point of it? And so on. I guided it a little bit because we went down the route of safety. And again, that was it. Light, 2 words so far. Light, safety. No real brief, no narrowing, none of that. And then we have the conversation around light, safety. We came to helmets, to welders about seeing and being seen. And then we kind of come up with this idea of helmets, and that we were going to include and make our own. And then we jumped straight into AI. And we went into image generators. We were looking with their parents, for anyone nitpicking about ages. They were there, had permission, and they prompted and made and come up with their pictures. And so they're on. I posted it yesterday, so it's up on my LinkedIn, about the pictures they come out with, and then they went into making that helmet. And there's no cut out, there's no this is how you do it. They know where the tools are because we taught them. They know where the cardboard is, where the lollipop sticks are. We've given them free reign, and they're able to just let their imagination go. So that's literally a session, an hour and a half, and then we have to literally kick them out. They're running back in next session because they've loved it and they want to just get back to it. And it wasn't like, then this is the beauty, and this is what I was really proud of, because I will get stuck into pictures and AI images all day long. I love them. I think it's so fun. But they spent a grand total of 5-6 minutes on it, and they wanted to get away from the device and into making straight away.
Wicked. Yeah, nobody's making the same thing. There's no instruction. We haven't told them at all within reason what to do, and then they're free. And if they get it wrong, they get it wrong. So, right, what's the worst that's going to happen?
And interestingly, like that generative making as opposed to generative AI, it's wonderful. And when you see people who have created something themselves, whether they've got help, whether they've had structure, whether they've had, I don't know, instruction, when there's a massive amount of accomplishment, right? And I suppose that is part of the mindset, the culture, the stuff that you're talking about, and the attitude that we're trying to get to, is that, like, if you do something because you have to do it, or you do something because that's what it says on the exam spec or whatever else it is, or to get into that university, there's almost like it's that extrinsic motivation versus the intrinsic stuff again, right? So like there's something within us as human beings that wants to do things that make a difference. And what I really like hearing about what you're trying to do is trying to make this real world. We've talked about this a few times on the podcast very, very recently, about making sure that any of this stuff talks about real world problems. It's not about you need to know the ins and outs of Macbeth, not right or wrong, but is knowing the characters in the opening scene and what they say, is that going to stop climate change? Is that going to stop the political tensions that we've got now in the Middle East? What is it going to affect any of that kind of stuff? And do we need to think creatively and innovatively in that space?
It was one of the things that was key that was missing from my own education, I think. So I used to get frustrated with maths. I know I got nailed recently for my views on long division. But I think that the key bit that was missing was context. And I can get on board with anything if you can help me understand the benefit. So you're going to teach me a thing. Where am I going to use that thing? What's that useful for? Because then I can really embrace it and understand it. And so that's because I've been in the whole industry bit. I can bring the context of how we would actually bring that thing to life. But consistently what we had to do, because it was new product innovation, it was solving ideally real world problems, but really understanding them as well. Like, where did that happen? Who does it happen to? Because it's not happening to me. Like, if it's an air quality issue, where I live, luckily, the air quality is really good. But some of the people we were working for or making products for, they wouldn't be able to see the house across their street because they're literally living in a virtual soup. It's mental. And so helping the kids understand what's the context, who's experiencing this, that breeds that idea of empathy, not just thinking about themselves, but about thinking other people. And then that, again, there's so many bits you can just unpack from what we're doing, which are just useful for society, for helping to understand their classmates or helping to understand the world around them, or learning just to be a useful member of society that doesn't just consistently take and remove stuff, but actually gives back and wants to help people. We love it.
I've got about a million things. I'm just trying to process that in my. I think I often talk about, and I don't want to criticize my school at all, but I really struggle remembering anything that I did at school.
Mm.
I don't think I really struggle anything. You know, Ben and Dan and Ben often recites, and I remember this, and I can remember this, and I can do this, and I was like, can't remember anything. Maybe is that me as a person? But I can't remember anything. I was told I was
I ask this
average.
question all the time. What do you truly remember from your primary years? And it's typically it's the visceral stuff. It's the for me, it was the time that we went down the secret tunnels, or the time we built the secret tunnels at the manor house, or the time that we built a catamaran and then put it on the local river, or we went to the ice cream farm and learned how they make ice cream. But the visceral experiences, that's the ones you really remember, isn't it?
Yeah, primary school. I remember a lot. I remember not being in often because I was travelling when I was playing football, and I remember that enjoyment and everything else. But I remember the teachers. I remember a lot of memories. Secondary school, struggling. I'll be honest.
See, that's the
really struggling.
I remember, like I said, outcomes not getting there. So I remember DT. We were making metal sports figures, and you got like a metal bar. You essentially just cut down the arms and the legs, and then bent them into a pose kind of thing. And I remember making 5 of those. You were supposed to get through one. I made 5 different ones. I made like boxing ones and everything else. I loved it, and that's what I remember. I remember getting taught animation, stop animation, and just absolutely loving that. And I'm the same. Otherwise, all I remember is the stuff that happened at lunchtimes with your mates, all that core stuff. So Ben's really passionate about getting girls into engineering. I'm sort of more so passionate about boys and getting them academic and getting them out of this habit of the same thing of, oh, I can't do it. So I'm going to give up. And like I said, I've got my sport, I've got my football, I've got my mates, I'm good. And actually getting them into a point where it's acceptable for them to go, no, do you know what? I'm gonna pay attention. I'm gonna stop acting up, and I'm gonna really dig into this. And it's how you kind of get over that, whether that's masculinity, whether that's issues with their own sort of self-image and so on. I find that really interesting, and actually to kind of put them on the narrow, because I remember not being exactly like that at school, and that's why I was like, I thankfully didn't go to uni when I did, because it would have been a waste. I would have been in debt for nothing at that point. But thankfully I went back about 5 years later and got the absolute most out of it.
Do you know what? Like we're all in that space, right? Aren't we? Of probably, in fact, I think all 4 of us on this call have on this podcast, like we're not. We either went to university later on, or we have changed what we read. I did an RE degree, right? And I'm talking tech most of the time now. So it's like, how do these things work? And what we're seeing here is, because we've thrived, or we are thriving, or we're doing as well as we are, whatever else we want to call it. Our success is based on is despite education, as opposed to because of education. And that really hurts me, if I'm honest. I'm not saying that is the case for all of you. I'm struggling. I had a really good education. I was very fortunate. I went to a grammar school set up. I was scholarship to go. I talk about this often. Like, I know that education, there's a lot of really good things in that, but I wonder whether that has set me up, and what could we do different? And I wonder, as we kind of think about, before we get into our quick fire questions for you, which we like to do towards the end, I'd love to kind of explore is this. Well, what could it look like? What could it look like? What could education look like if it was focused on invention? What might it look like?
Well, yeah, for me, we took our kids out of mainstream education 7 years ago. So we've been home educating for 7 years, and we've done all sorts of different flavors of that for a long time. But the crux of everything is all about projects. But what's the project you're doing? What's the problem you're solving? And what are all the different ways to approach that problem? And so I would absolutely be focusing everything towards projects as a whole, project-based learning, which I think is highly valuable, and then pulling the different lessons or experts into that. That's where I'd focus things. I'd also be spending a lot more time looking at maybe some of the UN sustainability goals, things like that. Getting the kids to actually think about some real world actual problems. How would they approach it? What could they do? Not that they can necessarily solve it at school, but why shouldn't they be looking at some of those really big challenges? that would be the focus for me, the significant focus. There's the more like physicality of the school and how all that kind of works, and we're doing some really nice work at the minute, getting to work on some schools that don't even exist yet and getting to imagine what could they be. And I've literally went mental recently and just drew a load of stuff of what I think that could physically be like. But the crux of it for me is predominantly about projects.
Yeah, and for me, I think it's got to be, we've got to start looking at the structure of school. And like I said, it's that stuff you ask any teacher, it's always not enough time, not enough resource, and like hemmed in by the sort of same old problems. And I think it's then looking at how we can, because I think we've looked a lot for years at how we operate within what we have at the moment. And now we need to start seeing some absolute change from a very high level, government level, structural level, from exam board level, of how we start looking at that. And I think that's when we'll start seeing a bit more freedom in what we're doing. And I think that's where we need to start looking, because the world has hugely changed since anyone's really properly looked at it. And when you keep doing it on a 4-year election cycle, it's just not gonna change. And it needs to be sort of almost separate to a certain degree, outside of that, or whether there's a body that looks after it or what, I don't know. So it's a real tough one, but I think that's where we'd like Ben's explanation is where we'd like to get to, and I think there's some higher level stuff that needs to change to get us there.
I agree. I think disruption is going to come, and disruption will come from industry. Disruption will come from the young children that are being creative and curious and pushing the boundaries. Creation of the new education system, or maybe I'm stepping into it too much, but I think the change will come when organisations like yourself will come in and disrupt it. We've seen it from online learning and these schools and everything else, because ultimately, if they can get a stronger education system and do a better process, often in a world that's been created outside of the shackles of the standard education system, that's a worry as well. And then it's access, isn't it? Scalability and everything else. I'm not questioning your thing, but I think that's the thing of how do we take it? Because you then have the haves and the have-nots in terms of not your product, but like the independent schools that are highly paid stuff, where they're doing wonderful stuff, but it's like you've got to pay a premium to get into it. And that's such a shame, isn't it, Joe? We're hoping that great projects like yours will change it at the ground level that isn't high cost and actually will be accessible to all, Joe, that want to do it, I think, Joe, when it's scalable.
I genuinely think that's incredibly important and is really meaningful and matters to me an awful lot. We've actually got something that we're working on for that. So we're but basically the whole kind of club, it kicked off years and years ago, but making this one project. And really long story short, I got everybody to make the same thing like you do, and it was just a bit rubbish. It was just herding kids through instructions. And the magic moment happened when I literally just put a problem on the board and I got the kids to themselves, with a bit of guidance, solve that problem. And I'm like, that's the crux. That was the magic moment for me. It was a beautiful, beautiful moment to step back and just to watch them problem solve at ages 7 to 11. It was wonderful. And I'm like, that is what we're going to do from now on. And we're now taking that one problem and rolling out. The aim is to have 52 of these problems. It's going to be called Problem of the Week. And our aim is to basically gift that to the world for free. And then largely what we do is all like bits of cardboard and lollipop sticks and stuff like that, because to one person that's rubbish and it's going in the recycling bin. To me, that's gold, and I can make a fully working car out of it. It's wicked if you just know what to do with it. So if we can take away the need to necessarily have money and high tech and expensive, and there's not enough time, or all the things you say that are the barriers, let's take all those barriers away. And our aim is to gift that out. And then we've got a bit of a target by the end of next year to reach 1 million kids with problem solving capability. And just imagine for a second the butterfly effect of that. 1 million kids that actually know how to solve problems, who are not afraid to fail, who are not afraid to try, who are not afraid to put their ideas out there and experiment and make and build, and don't class themselves as a failure when it doesn't work. Imagine 5 years' time, imagine 10 years' time, imagine 20 years' time, and imagine if we teach those people to teach those people to teach those people. That's what we're all about. So, there are some things that aren't without the money, but this is going to be free, and it's going to be epic.
Love it, love it. So we could probably dig into some of this for hours and hours and hours, but for the sake of it, your time and our listeners' time, we try and keep it around about an hour. So we've got 3 quick fire questions. All right.
Shoot.
The key is the quick fire.
Yeah, sorry about that. I know it's me.
No, this bit. No, it wasn't at you. It was at you. It wasn't at you. It's as much at us as it is at you. Honestly,
it's me.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely at him.
It is me. Yeah.
Yeah. So the first one is the future of exams: online, traditional, or scrapped.
I would love to scrap them. If that's a possibility, get rid of them.
Yeah. Are we only allowed to pick 3? One of the 3. Yeah, scrap them.
Okay.
Continuous assessment.
Okay. Key skill for students in 2040.
I mean, we've just spent an hour saying problem solving, so I think you can guess that one. But I would say key skill for kids is talking and presenting. That's what we need to focus on for a lot of them, and then that helps with confidence, which leads to problem solving.
Are you saying same, Ben? Are you joining that same one?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know how quick you want to be. Yeah. Another key skill, storytelling. I think storytelling is absolutely wicked. Doesn't matter where you're going to go. It's brilliant. Really, really useful. Stop talking. But storytelling's ace.
10th person to mention that, I think now.
Right.
Okay, last one is education in 50 years. What would your vision be?
In 50 years, I'd like to see smaller schools. I think we need more schools, smaller, with smaller classes, and share sort of the resources out. That's what I think will make a difference. And that's one way to look at and move forward instead of these big, large sort of factories. And then, just digital as possible.
I'd want a system where every individual is fully known and understood and understands themselves. And we talk about this idea of personalized education, but actually where it truly exists and where people can be literally the very best version of themselves, because whatever our systems, AI, human-centered or whatever, are developed and allowed to be at a place where people can literally dig into themselves, find the very thing that they're absolutely incredible at, and we absolutely unleash them to do that. Imagine what an incredible world that could be.
What a way to finish. What a way to finish. Aaron and Ben, it's been an absolute delight. And thanks for your time this afternoon. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. Loved it.
Yep.